Okay, when it comes to subtraction, our rules definitely change, okay? And that's one of the things, because we no longer have the commutative property to help us out, as well as the effect that the subtraction has. Some people have a hard time with subtraction and negatives, and if we kind of view them in the same realm, sometimes that makes it a little easier, okay? So being able to use and reuse a subtraction as a second negative, that's why we get the idea of a negative adding a negative, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, okay? And so that's probably a terminology that you heard, and so when we get these subtracting a negative in there, okay, we can rewrite that as adding a positive, okay? Then we fall back to our addition rules. But if the students aren't real comfortable with the addition rules, maybe that's not helping out at all, and we're just putting them back into confusion, okay? So understanding where the students are at and what they are comfortable with. So if addition went well, now as we bring in subtraction, we can either depend on that or teach it as something totally separate, okay? So the options for us are being able to write these in a different way, okay? So if I have a positive subtracting a positive, right? Two positives, we're used to this, okay? Why should this be any different? Well, because of the introduction of integers, we can now start to get answers that are different than what we've gotten before. So specifically, if we have something like 6 minus 8, okay? Previous to understanding integers, this was not an allowed problem. We'd say it's no solution, or students would start to project their own thinking onto there and might say, oh, the answer's 2, okay? Because they did something like 8 minus 6, and that's really incorrect. But they may have been told, always take the bigger minus the smaller, okay? When we've said something like that, a teacher says something like that, we don't understand the implications that it has. So we have to be very careful about that, okay? So when this comes up and I have a smaller number minus a bigger number, how do I deal with that, okay? Well, there is the way to rewrite it as 6 plus negative 8. When I do that, now I'm dealing with a situation that I already understood from my addition rules, okay? And I can fall back on that. So this can be rewritten that way, okay? Or I start to look at this, the absolute value of each of these, and knowing that the absolute value of the second one is larger means that I will have a negative answer in this situation, okay? So most of these don't have to deal with, and we can deal with this a couple of ways. Understanding, okay, my answer, negative, then I can subtract in the order that I want to because I've already established the sign, okay? So being able to do that, 8 minus 6, that's going to be positive 2, and that goes here, okay? So there's a couple of different ways, and you just got to find where students are comfortable. Doing a universal teaching for it, that's up to you and what you're comfortable with, but you've got to be ready for them to come and say, I didn't understand what you said. Oh, great, okay? So here, positive minusing a negative. So if I have something like 5 minus negative 3, okay? Being able to rewrite that, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. I can rewrite it as 5 plus 3, okay? 5 plus 3 is pretty clear for us to understand and be able to do. Now it's just going to be 8, okay? It increased the overall end result for it, okay? So that's our rewriting option, or I can look at this, okay? And I'm taking away 3 negatives, and that's hard to see. I'm going to do a video with blocks to help us be able to see that, and that's why I like the hot and cold cubes to be able to help out with that. So if this is still not real comfortable for you, hold off and watch that video to help out, okay? negative minusing a positive, okay? Again, we have something like 2 minus 4, sorry, negative 2 minus 4, okay? In this kind of setup, this and this have absolute answers, okay? Because we can do the rewrite of a negative 2 plus a negative 4. This and this both are based on the same rules from our addition. The signs are the same when we're adding. You keep the sign and add the 2, right? So this becomes negative 6. Having things lined out like that, these rules are probably more likely that students are comfortable with them than the opposite signs one, okay? So being able to do that, rewrite a subtraction as an addition of a negative helps them to be able to see that and be, okay, that rule I was comfortable with, let's keep building off of that. Great, okay? A negative minus a negative, okay? These two have fixed answers of their signs. These two are now the weird ones, okay? So this, it all depends on which one of them has a larger absolute value. Up here, we had a larger absolute value in the end, okay? But if it was something like 8 minus 6, that's like what we're used to, okay? Here, similar, but opposite, okay? So if I have a negative 10 minus a negative 5. Now I can come back up to subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive if they're comfortable with that. Rewrite that as negative 10 plus 5. Okay, so I'm going to end up getting a negative 5 out of that. Okay, my first value had a larger absolute value. That determined my end result. If I were to switch this around, negative 5 minusing a negative 10, okay, think about it, we can add 10 to it, or look at the absolute value, okay? This one is bigger, so it's going to be positive. And that's, now again, like I said, a little opposite. So I'm going to have a positive, 10 minus 5 is 5, okay? So being ready for that and kind of the opposite aspects, and it's a back and forth that kids are going to get fairly often confused or, wait, say that again, repeat that, and we need to help lump these into those kinds of categories for them. And they aren't all going to lump the exact same way. So be ready for what kids are going to have questions on, especially as they head into these positives and negatives and with the addition and subtraction.